Hello and good afternoon. We're so delighted that you're able to join us for this Ask the Expert session. And this afternoon, I'm joined by Emma Reynolds, who is one of the top event producers in the world. For those of you that have attended live, you might recognise her because she is our producer on live, but that's mainly because she's also a family friend, so she comes and does me a favour. Because in real life, she takes part in all sorts of really amazing events as a producer. Most notably, she did the World Cup launch for Adidas and had an audience for that of 35 million. That was online, and she then did all their social media marketing after that. And she also is a live event and did the America's Cup Jubilee, which was an event for 70,000 people. So really very, very experienced in her field. These days, she's far more involved with virtual events, and that's where her interest lies. But she also does a lot of coaching and a lot of training of teams and working with companies to make sure that their events are absolutely the very best that they can possibly be. So Emma, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm so delighted that you've taken the time out to come and talk to our audience, because we're seeing so often on social media at the moment, them saying, we've been asked to take an event and to turn it into something that, rather than being the live event that we have every year, that of course, because of coronavirus, they're now being asked to do online. And I think they could really do with some help with that.
Absolutely, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So then, let's get started. The first question that I want to ask you, because there seems to be a lot of confusion around this, is what is the difference between a hybrid event and a virtual event and an on-demand event?
Okay, so have you got an echo? Oh, is it okay?
You're fine. You're absolutely fine.
So, virtual event for me is it's a live event predominantly with live speakers from, at the moment, wherever their locations are, beamed out live. We're designing loads of hybrid events at the moment, and one in case that we've been designing this month was a virtual event, a hybrid event, where you create a sort of live, semi-live environment, and you have a semi-audience and a real show, but then it's beamed out as a virtual event would be. So it's streamed. So it's sort of part live, part real space, real design, car reveal, or your executives within their offices. On demand is pre-recorded. It's like Netflix. You can go back whenever you want. Normally you'd do a combination of the two. So you'd have your live event and then you'd have on demand afterwards. And the reason being is that you can sort of capture about an extra 20% of people that didn't come to your live or your hybrid through catch up, as it were. Just like Netflix, you can go in, grab it.
Okay, and so with your hybrid events, would you usually do those in a studio, or would you have a live audience there, or would it be that you were just filming live and making it look live, but broadcasting it out?
So, we're in really unique times at the moment. So what's happening is that most people are doing virtual events. So people are broadcasting from their home, and we might support that with some kit, or they might use their own laptops like we're doing now. A hybrid can be putting a broadcast studio into somebody's office. So it's not going into a venue. You've got the kit there. You've got people distancing at the moment, and maybe some semblance of an audience. So there's people there wherever you want it to be, but it still gets streamed out.
Okay. Do you think we're ever going to go back to live events?
This is one thing I think you can quote me on. Sometimes they don't quote me on this, but absolutely, I think 1,000% hybrid virtual events are here for forever. And the reason being is that the technology is changing so much that I think people will think, well, actually, this event suits virtual, and then let's put more resource into the human-to-human contact that we know we need, or the human experience. But I think there'll be a mix when people look at their events calendars.
Yeah, because live event Oh, now I do have an echo, so I'm going to put my headphones on. Excuse me. Live events, what we're finding is, there we go. When it's live, it sometimes has a problem. Okay, so when you're doing live events, I've just seen from PSAV, which is the biggest company in the world pretty much for AV, and especially particularly in America, they were showing floor plans and things as to how we were likely to have to socially distance. And, you know, events that were usually 110 people, maybe, you could have 24 in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing that everywhere. And we always get a huge space and think, hooray, we can get 80 people in there safely, and you can't. But I don't think it's about that. I think it's more about the fact that people will be much more discerning about how they travel and their footprint. And I think that's going to increase. So I think that there will be travel. There will definitely be really focused live events. But I think an awful lot of things will just be done brilliantly online.
Yeah, and there are so many benefits, aren't there, to doing something online as opposed to doing it face to face, because I know that you think that it's going to be really innovative and creative and all these things. And actually anything that you can do as a live event, you can probably do as well, if not better, if differently, online.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, I'm really excited about it because it's new and it's so focused, and you know, you have these immense economies of scale. So you start thinking, okay, if we're not spending all of that on logistics, then let's get some other really exciting things going with our budget. So I think that there's a really engaging, creative way to do virtual events, and I think virtual events are great for things like AGMs, but I think that they've got to be quite beautifully done. Otherwise, people do get a little bit of virtual fatigue, or if they're too long, they get screen fatigue. So, I mean, I know that you and I have been talking about this, how we make a virtual event really engaging, and there's a lot we can share and talk about. But it's exciting. It really, really is a good space to be in.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, obviously there are things that you're no longer going to have to spend on, like food and beverage and putting everybody up in hotels and all that side of things. So it makes it really cost effective too, doesn't it? And you can then take that budget and spend it on making your virtual event absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point. But I think also talking about that's scalable. So I'm thinking back to my, you know, producing days. So let's say we're doing an AGM where we've got 500 people in London and we've got a couple of thousand people in New York. Suddenly you can scale that up without any difficulty in your logistics. And let's say you want 500 people in London for your AGM. Let's say you want suddenly 800. All the logistics and costs that used to be behind that has gone. But you do need to put the money into really user-friendly environments, and they've just got to be super sleek if you're doing a decent event online.
Okay, so talk to me about how you take an event to the next stage of amazing then.
So there's just so much. Where do we start? So definitely enhance your speakers. Get really good speakers. Use news anchors. Use people that are really used to the TV medium. So you can have lots of brilliant speakers, and you can have, you know, quite famous moderators. So suddenly there's some glam. Use what we call swag, which is sort of gifts that go with the event, or tools that engage people in events. So some things we're doing at the moment is we'll send a box, and before the AGM goes live, you'll open your box and there'll be a cafetiere and some beautiful coffee, and you have a almost one-on-one barista session, and then you have a beautifully moderated keynote, but then you can go off to your rooms, but the rooms are virtual, and you can almost get your own avatar and feel like you're the only person there. And then you can do after parties, you know, you can do wine tastings, and you can do beautiful branded environments that are almost 3D. So you can have a DJ, if you've got some younger people than I am, come partying with your cocktails and learn how to make your cocktails. So there's loads of things you can do with content, and there's loads of things that you can do by thinking, really love to have that this time.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily just have to be Zoom based. I mean, we'll get onto technology and everything in a moment. But what I want to do is to go right back to the beginning. And I can see we've got some questions coming up, and I promise you I will get to them all. They're all on my list. And there are some quite specific ones. So bear with us, keep listening, you'll get the answers. But the first question I really want to say to you is, where do you start? I mean, so your event for this year has totally been cancelled, and now you're having to put on an event online. Where do you start to plan all that?
So I was a PA. So my brain, first and foremost, works in a very sort of logistical way. So I tend to sort of segment out a process. So I always start by thinking about my venue, my virtual floor plan, how do I want to use the space? So it might be based on a keynote, a conference. So how many people am I going to get in there? How many speakers, and how do we want that to look? And then you start building out what you want to support that event and what will be really attractive and what makes your audience feel like they're the only person there. So the simple answer is, just like you plan a normal event, visualize your event, look at your floor plan, and then talk to your technical support, or your IT department, or your designers about how that comes live technically. Yep. And then it's all about agenda, because a really attractive agenda and with loads of things happening is exciting. I mean, I can see sometimes a dashboard to a virtual event, and it's like, I want to go there, I want to go there, I want to do cocktails, I want to do yoga, as the sort of pre-warm up, the wellness. So visualize everything, create an agenda. When you're creating your agenda, realize that it's very different to live. Every second is poignant, because in a way you're doing like a TV timeline. It's 3 seconds of intro, go to CEO, video, animation. So you've got a really tight agenda. Work on your agenda and expand it. And bear in mind, because everything is so focused, you don't need as long. So let's say your director of finance normally spends 20 minutes on talking about that aspect of your event. You're likely to get that into 6 or 7 minutes very effectively. So it's good to really think about the translation of time into a virtual environment. And you know that from watching TV, you know how much you look and absorb. So it's so practical, just put your PA head on, your admin head on, your EA head on, your event planning head on, and just go through those steps.
Okay, so then which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Would you be looking at the venue first, or would you be going, okay, so here's the agenda? Because you and I both know, because you work with me on live, you sit there and you go, okay, so here are the sessions that we want to do, and how many breakout rooms do we need? And we need people to go out for coffee, and maybe we need another area where people can go and do yoga or go and get a massage. It's exactly the same, isn't it, online? But quite often that's driven by the agenda. So maybe it's, side by side.
Yeah, I'd say side by side. I think that's a really good thing. I think to get costing, it's quite good to look at the floor plan, because you'll start looking at capacity and therefore broadcast and how many speakers and where, and those are all of the definitive things that start building the budget, the platform. And then when you get into the agenda, you're looking at content. So then you're looking at how you translate, be it a deck or a video or an intro link into an agenda. But yeah, so side by side is good. They both lead to being able to timeline this and cost it.
I love the fact that virtual events are so much more agile, and you can bring so much more technology into it and make it look so much more interesting in some ways than you can on a live event. but for much less budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's not just agile, it's just so fluid. So those are words I keep using at the moment is, you know, it's just instantaneous, it's real life, it's scalable, you know, you can scale down as well as up. You know, just some of the things that used to be a real headache don't need to be there in virtual. But there's other things you need to consider. So, but I'd say it's much more flexible.
So how are you structuring your event then, Emma?
So the planning, or how I go through the whole sort of planning process? Yeah.
So okay, you've got your agenda, you've worked out what the virtual floor plan looks like, then what would you do?
Okay, so I've visualized my virtual floor plan. I've got a pretty good handle on the agenda, enough to talk to technical, and that's where you
broadcast agenda. Yes, broadcast agenda, not just a normal agenda like you would do for an event. Everything in minute detail. So it goes to video now, it goes to sound now, it goes to the person that's speaking now, then it goes, so minute detail.
Yeah, you've nailed it. So in fact, that's a resource I'd really like to share. And I know we're going to sort of hopefully keep this going, but what I'd like to give everyone is a broadcast agenda that I've adapted so that everyone can use it. So it just shows how you schedule out your agenda, and it's all there done for you, because it's just a sort of, it's like a technical show run in a way, more than a standard agenda, because that's how you mix a broadcast show and then it goes out to your delivery platform. So there's a couple of things. I start with virtual floor plan, look at the overall agenda. I translate that into then a sort of broadcasting agenda, which tells me what content I need, because you want to put lots of video in if you can. You want, you know, your content to pop. Then I make my team, and so you've got your internal team within your company, and that's very, very likely to be pretty much identical to that of a live event. But then you add in your virtual technical team. So instead of working with your AV company or your production company, when you get to your live event, what you get is a technical production team at the outset, and you start then working on your platform and how that looks, and where then you're sending this information, and you start working how you're going to broadcast that, how people are going to broadcast from their houses at the moment. And so that's a sort of chunk of work, but it's not difficult, because you just think about it as a live event. Just be really practical about it. Then get on with your content. So working on your own content with your executives, with your, you know, creative department. And then, just like a live event, we get into all of our briefings, written briefings, face-to-face briefings. But then there's another thing we add in, and that is a layer of technical testing, because you want to support everyone's environment. So rather than turning up at your venue and you've got a fantastic production team and a producer like me that supports that, we do that in advance. And then do a lot of rehearsals. Rehearsals are key, because you can't get to a stage and work through the night or give a whole day to it, or people just know they can get away with it on a live stage. This sort of rehearsing is, there's a lot of new disciplines, and people need to get around, you know, the fact that there's no feedback. It's got to be succinct. They don't have much time.
A lot of the presenters are finding that really hard, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes coaching. We've been talking about that. We're doing a series, I know I'm working with you on that, which is becoming your best virtual self. And I just think there's so many pointers we can give people that are really helpful.
For sure. Look, we have a question here from Vicky Angel. She says, I'm preparing a offsite in a few weeks. I work in gaming, so everyone is tech savvy, but what platform would you advise as an ideal one to have for collaborative brainstorming? There are 9 of us, and usually the sessions are quite intimate, but not very formal.
So gamification. I haven't done a lot of gamification, and there are some specific platforms. I think that you can adapt places like Blue Jeans for some interactive areas. I think that there's some other platforms I'll share afterwards, but I'll make sure they stand up. You can put the brainstorming into your interactive layers, and there's companies like Glisser where you can actually have your polling, your interactive, and your unique brainstorming. But gamification is something that's going to be really developed over next weeks. But thanks for that. I wish I could tell you more platforms, but what I'll do is I'll ping them back out later when I've just checked they do stand up.
Okay, so listen, your team's going to be different, isn't it? Your team is going to be really different.
Yeah.
So tell me where you should be focusing on pulling team members in that you wouldn't do normally if you were in a live event.
Yeah, so obviously you start with your strategy, wherever that comes from, and your own logistics. Then I think there's a much greater content delivery piece. So I would say that you're going to be creating more content than normal, and very succinctly. So working with, whoever does your video, your animations, your animated links, think about it like you would the Oscars. If you know that you sometimes go to full zoom of a beautiful animated link that then leads into a live environment that comes out into a video about that film or that person, that's how quick and fluid the content works. And then you have your normal technical delivery team. So you'll have your technical partners helping you make this real. But as part of their team, you still get your producers. So your technical producers, technical floor managers who run all the speakers, do the speaker wrangling on the day. And then a number of the normal crew you'd get in technical. So your vision mixing, your lights, your audio. So I'd say from company side, there's more content. I'd really say that's something you need to factor in really early on.
I think it's really interesting that you're looking at this as a broadcast, because what I'm seeing so often at the moment with people who are doing these kind of things like conferences or whatever it happens to be, is that they are just using Zoom, and it is one webinar after another, as opposed to thinking about it as an experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's, if you've got good content, one webinar after another can work brilliantly. You've just got to make it cute, and you've got to remember that an hour is an awful lot of time for somebody to sit at their desktop with no real interaction. But you can sort of fudge it, you can have a little bit of pre-recorded on demand, and then you can sort of go into live, or you can give people their own avatars. You can bring in some interactivity halfway through, or you can punctuate it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Okay, so I've got somebody here who is saying, have we got any tips for being the best presenter virtually? Now, I know that you've been doing this Best Virtual Self course, which we're going to release very shortly. And I know you're also working on 10 top tips, but could you throw a couple at us just so that they have something to be getting on with?
Yeah, sure. So where do I start? So perspective. Always start with your computer in the right place. Don't look down at your computer, get your perspective, get your kit, test lights and audio. So we do a little section on making the best of your immediate perspective environment. Then it's supporting what you do. So where you have your prompt, if you have prompt, it's creating the best environment. And then it's actually using presentations that really work for the virtual space. And then there's lots of other things that you need to do. So there's all sorts of etiquette about how you use language, the amount of time you leave between questions so things can be edited. There's less movement. You don't do this, too much movement doesn't work. There's a sort of fisheye on a laptop lens. You have a whole different way of presenting yourself virtually.
I love the thing you were telling me about yesterday, where there's a company, isn't there, that's doing almost a studio in a box.
Yeah, sure. So what we would be doing is obviously supporting your environment, because you've got to make sure that your tech's robust. And quite often people want to have uniform backdrops. Some people want to have a broadcast camera set up just so you get that really nice high-end production value. But you can get a perfect sort of cube, as it were, where it's got perfect lights already set, brilliant Dolby sound, and a broadcast camera in the box, and it's plug and play. You literally plug it in into Ethernet, into power, put it at the right level, there's an instruction, and you have beautiful broadcast environment. So
wonderful. There's Evan Wood, who is one of our regular contributors, who just says, thank you for making that very important distinction between a static webinar and a truly dynamic broadcast. The latter is fluidly interactive and engaging for the audience and provides a much richer experience. Thank you, Evan. Yeah, nice comment. I've got somebody here saying that they have experienced people needing twice as much content as they had before, in order to be able to fill the same amount of time. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, because let's put it this way, you can't have too much clutter. So you're going to make, let's say you're transitioning between live and Keynote, a PowerPoint deck. First off, it's got to be really visible. There's got to be cute animation. And you're going to click through much more than standing there and actually using that as a prompt. So you might have longer decks. You still time them out. But in addition to that, you're going to have maybe some live video. You're going to pre-record them in case anything goes down. You're going to have the animated link into them, an animated link out, which is often a reuse of the same graphics, but they're just timelined out. So yeah, I mean, because you're trying to make a holistic 16:9 experience. So, you're mixing up the whole time. So your CEO might do a really amazing welcome for 3 minutes, but you can punch a video in there, and then you can have other rooms for analysts or for press or for, product development demos where, you've got so much more content. And of course, yeah, there's just endless room for any content you've got. You can change it up for this environment.
Fabulous. There's a really nice question here, which I know will go to your creative side. It says, hi, Emma Lucy. I have a half-year event coming up for staff where we normally would do a town hall for 2 hours and then a summer party afterwards. With how things are now, I have to look at doing this all virtually. I need to make it engaging, but not so people are Zoom fatigued, but are involved and people are energized. So the company update and everything else is fun. Have you got any tips or ideas?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for that. So your 2 hours might not be 2 hours in this environment. I think you've really got to have a look at your timings, because you're taking away people movement, you're taking the on and off from stage away, you're taking the length of time it takes for people to introduce them on stage. It's much more succinct. So if I were doing this, I'd do some teasers. I'd probably do a physical invitation. I'd make it fun. There might be a theme. They'd probably get something in advance, whether it's like some fun t-shirt they're going to wear, some gifts, and some things that you open at certain times in certain sessions. So make unique registration sites. You can highly personalize those. You can make everyone feel like the event's about them. get them to the town hall environment, which is likely to be sort of 45 minutes instead of 2 hours because of this whole succinct and focused use of time. And then do team building afterwards. You know, you can actually get people to do a whole team building, and then you could go into fun workshops, and then you could show what people have made in their workshops, and then you could have an after show party. And at the after show party, everyone in their box has a mini bottle of champagne, and you know, everyone cracks open their champagne, and you've got Pete Tong playing, because you can get Pete Tong for a half an hour set a lot more cheaply than flying him over to snow bombing in Austria to do a night set. So we call it the swag. Use the enhancements, personalize it, and just when you're imagining your desktop, give people options and be inventive. So if you've got a brilliant team building idea, talk to your technical delivery people and say, well, how can we bring this to life? And they're going to say, well, there's that app and there's that platform and we've got this. Let's do it. Because that's what all of us are doing at the moment. We're just reimagining every day.
I think it's really wonderful, and there are some great ideas there. But I also think, you know, being able to have animation in there, being able to have music in there, making sure that you're moving the thing along. You're absolutely right. I think the 2 hours will come down enormously in time because you're going to be able to be far more, as I said earlier, agile and jumping from thing to thing, but making it flow in a way that is exciting.
Yeah, sure. So there was something that we were asked to think about 3 or so weeks ago that I think is relevant, where we were asked to think about a stadium opening. Well, it's a music venue opening, but it's going to be huge in a major city. And so I just thought, well, okay, if I'm imagining this, I want to sort of almost be beamed down through that city to see the environment at night, and you've got the buzz and the sound effects, and then you get to the stadium and you sort of fly into the 3D environment and everyone's erupting and you can hear people warming up, and then you can walk down a corridor past the green rooms. So instantly you start thinking about how you could make that feel, and it's not as complex. Now that's a big thing, but in relation to the town hall event, start thinking about how you want that to feel, and I think your budget will go a lot further than you think.
Yeah, and you were talking about getting Pete Tong to pay for half an hour. You know, one of the really great things I think about virtual events is that if you have got a speaker that you really want, if you're paying for half an hour of their time, you really are paying for half an hour of their time. You're not paying them a 3-day rate because they've got to travel in from somewhere else, or their hotel room, or their food, or anything like that. You are just paying them for half an hour of their time. So you may be able to get people that you would never expect to be able to get to come and do stuff at your events, right?
I completely agree. So, for example, TV anchors make great moderators in virtual because they're just used to this environment. They're used to making you feel like you're in a studio whilst they're talking to nobody. So let's say you take someone from Sky News and you want them to moderate your event. You're not flying them over one day, rehearsing one day and doing all the chemistry meetings, doing the event, then they stay for the gala dinner, then they go home, and before you know it, it's a 6K fee, 7K fee. What you're doing is you're booking the face-to-face briefing, then a script development meeting, then a technical meeting, and then rehearsal, and then your live show with some time before. So that might be a day and a half of their time, as opposed to briefing days, and then 4 days, and then travel days, and all that sort of thing. And I think, you know, we're all affected by what's happening at the moment. I think people want that sort of income and that sort of involvement.
I agree. Okay, let's go to a totally different subject then. Dan Skirmer, who is a very good friend of all of ours, who runs the Birmingham PA Network, says that he thinks it will be really interesting to see how exhibitions and networking might take place with a live event online, as they're a really key part usually of large events, because supplier relations and building relationships with attendees is key. Have you got any thoughts around that, Emma?
Yeah, sure. And it's something I'm really interested in. And this is an area where we're going to see just huge development over coming weeks, not months. There are platforms for virtual expos, and you might even be developing your own, Dan, for your venue. But you can still do the networking. In fact, you can make it more focused, because you can have your sort of almost one-on-ones with your CEO. You can have your press room, you can have your networking spaces, and you can do peer-to-peer sessions. You can do thought leadership, you can get instant feedback, you can get real-time everything. And it's all about designing those spaces when you get to your platform, and then being innovative in your technology. And actually, we could do that. We could come back with some real scenarios to all of these questions that are being asked, where we can go into a little bit more detail. But absolutely, networking is key. The human experience is at the center of this. You've got to keep that alive.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting how things change, because I think this is a real definite living, breathing environment that's going to keep evolving. And I know that you are in the process of starting a blog that is purely for updates on that type of thing. And thankfully, you're going to let me know when you've got new things coming up, so we can post it on the Facebook group, because I think everybody's going to find that really, really useful. Really useful.
Well, what I'll do is I'll definitely answer the gamification question later today. And Dan, thanks for that question. We'll go into more detail in the blog, and we can share some of the platforms that work really well for that sort of thing.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emma. Can you give me an idea now as to how you would actually choose your speakers?
So you've got to have the normal speakers, of course. So, you know, if you're doing a summit, you're going to have the same people that need to talk, and that sort of hierarchy. I don't know, just go for it. You know, you're not limited to anybody in a part of the world. So let's say we're just imagining a great summit, and we've got a morning where we want to get a load of content in. Get your most inspired speakers. Who do you really, really, really have always wanted to come to your event? Ask them, because they can come if it's virtual. Definitely look at people who used to broadcast. And definitely, I would say, bring glamour to it and diversity. So if you're talking leadership, you know, leaders in sport, create your online panel. It might be past Olympians. You know, you can get that quality of speaker into your event nowadays. So where do I go? I mean, I know who I'd like to meet. Probably selfishly start choosing some people. Yeah, just imagine and put it out there. And also just remember, if you're booking speakers, you might have speaker agencies that are still on those higher fee bands. You've just got to negotiate down, because I don't know if everyone's translating now cost-wise into virtual.
I think your advice to let your imagination run wild is a really good one with the entire event, actually. But if we're going back to speakers for a second, how would you be briefing your speakers? Because I would suspect that a lot of speakers have never really worked in the virtual market. And I know simply from our speaker bureau, you know, we're actually doing training sessions every Monday night for our trainers, purely because so many of them are trying to make that transition, and we're wanting to make sure that they really know how to put their best selves across when they're out there in the market talking. What advice would you be giving for briefing them?
So we'll share our top 10 tips. So that's great for knowing you're doing the right thing. But I think this is a really valid question, because I've been analysing all sorts of people in virtual events recently, and I'm finding that actually people who are normally so charismatic and confident on a live stage are really flawed by the fact that you're talking to a camera or you know, your laptop. At the moment, I think because we're all doing virtual, it's laptops, but I think soon it's going to be mobile studios and broadcast kit that comes to your office. with limited people. So there's no feedback. You feel you've got to get it right instantly. You're not so used to the rhetorical language you use to a camera. You're not so used to the tail that you have to leave, to edit in and out of. So I would say do some coaching, practice, rehearse 3 times as much as you would normally. Make sure you get some pre-recorded content in case that person's ill on the day, so you've always got a fallback, and just put more into it. It's a really different thing, and I think that some people are going to thrive. Some people just will need that comfort of testing, looking at their content, re-rehearsing, rewriting so there's no fluff, making sure they're looking in the right place. I'm aware that in this broadcast, I'm not looking in the right place because I'm looking at you. We should be looking at the lens the whole time. Just work it and build that in, and don't let people think they can just turn up on the day, because that doesn't work. They're being cued by somebody in their ear, and if they're not in their ear, you're WhatsApping them saying, coming up in 3, 2, 1, live. They're there. They can't fluff it. They can't be saved like you can in a live event. So there's work to be done, and that's where you really think about it as a new medium and a broadcast.
So I think what is really important with live events like this, in terms of virtual, is, well, great content, but also making those events interactive. And we've talked a bit about the swag and maybe sending people stuff and turning something that could be a bit 2D into something that's more 3D. But what other ways actually within the broadcast can you make it more interactive? I've seen everybody and his wife seemed to be getting into polling just before we went into lockdown. And a lot of that was really awful. But are there other ways that you're able to get people really involved?
Yeah, there are. Polling, you get basic polling on some of the existing platforms. But if I were doing polling, I would use an interactive specialist. Because what they're going to have is they're going to have at least 7 or 8 amazing looking interactive platforms that you can just bring into your event off the shelf, so it doesn't have to be expensive, and they look fantastic. And then you start thinking, well, I want my interactive to feel like this, and I want it to look like this, and then you adapt those platforms. So yeah, you can still have the sort of multiple choice type questions, and you can still have the yes no's, but you could do facial recognition's coming, hand raise polling's coming. You can have all sorts of really interesting studios you go into, or bespoke surveys that you go into. So talk to an interactive specialist, get ideas, look around the internet. We know that, in the UK, Glisser is a market leader in this and have done live event polling for years, and make it work. And like I said, just keep thinking about it. Because the nice thing about the broadcast is you can bring your poll in real time, anytime, and then take it off. So all the way through, instead of saying, well, we're going to go to the audience and do a hand show, or can you use your remote to give us some feedback, or use your mobile, or go to your dashboard, it's instant. And then you can just have it subliminally coming in and out. And, I think there's a great use for interactive and thought leadership. And then you've got all this real-time data and analytics that is being created in front of your eyes, but also that comes from your virtual event, full stop.
Yeah, really fantastic. Okay, I'm going to get into what I consider to be the boring bit now, but you probably find really exciting. And that is looking at how you actually broadcast. So what are your best platforms? What do you think are exciting platforms to broadcast on?
Okay, so an analogy I might use is that you can get a basic platform, which is like a two-bedroom flat, where you've got this area and this area, and you can put a couple of people in there and a couple of people in there, and you can decorate the walls and change the backgrounds and make it sort of feel a little bit interactive, and then you can get a castle, and that's all down to budget. But when you get a castle or a manor house, which is sort of up there in terms of budget, well, not massive in comparison to what we used to spend in live, then you can get all of your anti-rooms, your networking spaces, your virtual spaces, your 3D spaces, a couple of plenaries. So is that answering it? So favorite platforms, I don't know. Everyone's using the standard platforms at the moment. There's new platforms coming on every week that are a little bit more adventurous. So again, in the blog, we could tell you. So we go from here, from Zoom, Skype, anything IBM, Blue Jeans, up to the new bespoke platforms that are still off the shelf, but they've got everything going on. Mm-hmm. And so you're sort of talking £1,000 to £20,000 if you wanted a sort of comparison in pounds. I know we've got people from all over joining us.
So how do you choose which one's right for you other than money?
Right. So I think what I found is that our streamers, so most of the people doing the technical broadcast element of this that support us would have been streamers before, doing all of the live stream. They've had this natural transition into virtual because in essence, you are still streaming a broadcast. I found that they have their favorites and they will know that functionality and they will have added in everything they need. So I know people that are doing brilliant broadcasts based on a Skype platform, and you wouldn't know it was Skype, but they say it's robust. I've got people that still love Zoom, but you can push your functionality to a limit. And if that isn't matching your desires, then you go to another platform. So I don't have a favorite because we're working across lots. We're all talking. That I've had some great new platforms just today. We haven't had a chance to play or talk to people. Because what you've got is you've got your platform, which is your video hosting platform. And then in the middle, you can do all your nice mixing and beautiful bits. And then you have your content delivery network. And those are sort of the three things that create a virtual event.
Yeah. Okay. And so how does that work? So the vision thing takes what the content is, it takes the platform and it kind of makes it all work together like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you've got it pretty right. So, so what you've got, this is how I visualize it, is you have your video hosting platform. So let's say that's our Zoom or our Blue Jeans. So you're using that functionality, but then you've got something that's mixing out your content. You're adding more things in, and that can be an online platform like vMix, or it can actually be a physical vision mixer. So you've got all your platform, you've got all your content, you've got your audio, you've got your video, you've got speakers, you've got pre-recorded, you've got your backups. That goes into one timeline, just like you'd look like a TV program, encodes, and then goes to basically another powerful computer, which is a content delivery platform, and streams everywhere. There are some that do both. So Facebook, for example, is also a CDN. CDNs, you've heard of them. That's YouTube, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Ustream.
Okay, so let's go absolutely back to basics. Supposing you have somebody who literally has no budget, but their bosses are saying, I don't just want a Zoom meeting. What I want is something that's going to be slightly livelier than that. What are the really basic things that you can do that are going to make an event more interesting?
Yeah, so that's a really good call, because that's going to happen a lot. So what I would be doing is, personally, I always get someone to work with on this. So whether it's someone who's brilliant at streaming or in your IT department, or you get buy time from a streaming company, because you can buy their advice, not necessarily their platform. And then you start pushing a less expensive platform to its limits. So you start putting in your nice backgrounds, you start mixing out the content really nicely, you start doing your beautiful lower thirds, you have inset video and little bits of animation, you can use some sound effects, use some pulling, and it's amazing how slick, with literally a couple of £1,000, you can make your event look. And the other thing you can do is, if people are still talking and presenting virtually, is you can send them branded backdrops and simple lights, do some coaching with them, so that when you come to this studio or this person, if you want it to look quite uniform or funky or whatever, you can send them their kits, and we're all doing that.
The devil's in the detail, isn't it, Emma, really?
Yeah.
In the same way as it is with live events, virtual events, I think making sure that you absolutely understand how it's all going to flow, and that your speakers all understand exactly how it's going to flow, so that all the detail is addressed.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that anyone that likes doing events and is good at events is going to adapt to virtual, because all you've got to do is get your head around the broadcasty bit, and then, you know, we've got you with that. They ping us, you know, exec, any questions. You know, it's just a steep learning curve. It's not too complicated. So let's just chat it through, and I'm going to be looking at all the new great platforms that are coming out, where you've just got off-the-shelf solutions, really cost-effective. And so going back to your question of making things amazing, I'll be saying, well, do this registration, because everyone gets unique information. Then they get unique data at the end, and actually it's only this. And then let's, you know, have fun with this, bringing everyone in. We'll have 1,000 people doing a team building, and then we'll do a collage with it, you know. So it's going to be fun.
It sounds enormous fun. We've got about 7 minutes to go. So if you out there have got any questions for Emma, speak now or forever hold your peace, as they would say. Emma, how long a lead time would you need in order to be putting on an event that, you know, if an assistant suddenly asked to do an event and to do it, you know, in 6 weeks' time, is that enough lead-in time, or would you ideally want more?
No, you can do it in 6 weeks. I'd say anything less than 3 weeks is pretty uncomfortable. But you can, and I know people that have. I would say that what would make me comfortable is 3 months, just so I can just get my budgeting done. We can agree our strategy. We know we're not going to rush our content. But you can do it in much less lead times.
Okay, and give me the top 3 things that you think can go wrong, and how can you avoid those?
Well, the things that you can't help, but you can work contingency around, are the fact that there's a lot of pressure on infrastructure at the moment. So in the UK recently, we've had Virgin go down, we've had some issues with BT, and it's just because of strain on the infrastructure, with everyone working from home and everything going virtual. And so I've been thinking about this. I think you should have a contingency and communication platform in place in case something that you can't control happens, like whole infrastructure crashes. So people get texts or WhatsApp or emails just saying, out of our control, we've lost our event. It's very unlikely, very, very unlikely it'll happen, but it would still look really bad if you didn't have that communication in place. There has been hacking recently. I mean, there's been some famous hacking of Zoom. They've tightened up their security immensely and are continuing to do so. But, you know, that's again out of your control. Things that I think are really visible are testing bandwidth. You know, you're not so worried about your broadcast. That's going to go on some beefy computer and cloud, but your speakers, you know, test the bandwidth, boost it, and do the basics. So if you're doing a broadcast, connect straight Ethernet into router. Don't rely on your Wi-Fi. It's test your bandwidth, make sure there's no lag, all that sort of thing. You can send mobile boosting units out. So if you've got your CEO who you really need to do a brilliant presentation, and he happens to live on the island of Skye, and forgive me, anyone who's in Skye, your internet might be great, but you might want to boost it. So you can do that. And then the other thing is, if you've got a really significant event, just pre-record everything. So let's say your CMO has got something so important. In case he's ill on the day, just have a pre-record of his session. It can look like it's live.
Yeah, and you can still have live chat even though you've got pre-recorded sessions.
Totally, and you can do things like continuity, so you don't have to know that was pre-recorded. I mean, you know, most radio shows, you know, definitely the 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning isn't live. They've done it 3 days before.
Indeed.
So, you know, it's just, you make it feel live.
Amazing. Okay, so we've got about 3 minutes to go. What I wanted to ask you was, what are the most interesting things that you've seen in the last few weeks since we've gone into lockdown? What have you gone, wow, that's really amazing. I love that.
Well, I think what I'm really liking is the depth of, well, there's two things I'm really liking. I'm liking the depth of the add-ons, because in some of the dashboards I've seen for really beautiful big online events, it's quite exciting because you'll have it's beautiful, but you'll have loads of things happening at once, and you've got that thing like, I really want to do the yoga, and I really want to speak in a small group to this Emily Skye from Australia on wellness, or, you know, so it's that richness of content that you can get in that feels like it's part of the event. Second off, you can put people in virtual worlds. So if you've got a bigger budget of like 100,000, you can have 3 of your key executives from around the world in a virtual world. You can actually have them looking like they're on the same set, interacting with people. And that's a mixture, that's mainly augmented reality. So a lot of the production houses have now got these virtual studios that can come to you, or you can go to them, and you can do loads of AR and VR and 3D Unity, amazing world stuff.
Very exciting, very exciting. So Emma, listen, if people want to contact you, they can email us and we will pass that on to you, but we will also make sure that we are posting your website address in the Facebook group as well. Yeah. And then people can go take a look at what it is that you do. But as I said at the beginning, you do more and more these days, as well as doing your events of kind of coaching one-to-one and dealing with companies that want to train teams and things, don't you?
Yeah, so after this, I'm talking with a consultant agency that's looking after Skye, and we're just doing some brainstorming. So it might be that someone wants to just say, these are my ideas, I just want to sound you out. And I sort of know what a lot of other people are doing. So I do that, but what I'm really interested in is coaching and sort of script development and just getting people really used to the environment. And I like the whole conceptualizing. So if someone just wants to say, come on, I just need that help for my first event, even if you feel it's quite a simple event, it's like, just get me going so I can take it from there, then we do that.
Yeah, and I know you're writing 3 courses for us at the moment, which I'm very excited about, which will be going on our new learning library. So we've got one on how to do amazing AGMs. So if as a company you're trying to put AGMs together and you're not quite sure how to do that virtually, we're doing that. We're doing one on if you are wanting to put on a conference that is a virtual conference. Emma will walk you through exactly how to do that. And there's also one on awards. So any of you out there that are putting on awards, we will be looking at that as well. But if there's anything else you would really like us to put some content together on for you as a course, then please drop me a line, because we would be delighted to create that for you. So it only remains really for me to say, Emma, thank you so much for your time. It's really such a joy. I spend a lot of time with you, but it's so nice to actually have time to give you to talk to our audience and to share your immense knowledge with everybody. It's been an absolute delight, and we can't wait to have you back again.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you, everyone. It's nice to be here. You know, I really want to share my knowledge. I'm just at that stage. So just keep the questions coming. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to come back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody out there. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you very soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.